I'm so pleased, or we are so pleased to have all of you here for this great weekend. I know so many family members have traveled long and far distances to be here, and it is incredibly meaningful for us, probably most especially for your sons, but incredibly meaningful for the faculty and the school community. My assistant, Amanda Roberts, who some of you have gotten to know through registering for this event, has told me that this is our largest Parents Weekend gathering ever, which I'm very excited about. Now, the backstory is that we have our largest enrollment ever, so it makes sense that this would be our largest Parents Weekend. But I said to Tracy last night, a record is a record. Your sons probably have not told you this, and they should, and I hope they will, but it is very, very meaningful for you to be able to share in their lives here at Salisbury, and I know they are the most especially pleased that you're here today. I think the weather is going to hold out. It's a little chilly. We'll have hot cider and cocoa and tea and coffee down at the fields this afternoon to keep you warm. But usually, all too many times in the past 20 years, we've had torrential downpour on this weekend. Those of you who have been here more than a year or two know that. So I think we should feel blessed this morning that the rain gods have held off. Although, as I said, it's going to be a little windy. If you're going to attend the football game this afternoon, an important safety note, our new spectator venue is finally complete and ready to use, and was inspected yesterday by a town official and deemed appropriate to use. We passed the safety test with flying colors. I will tell you that our contractor is a little late on filing the appropriate paperwork. So the town official wanted me to explain that to you, to tell you that it's totally safe to use and everything else. But we have been granted a one-time use until the paperwork has been filed. You just never know. If you were here earlier this week, you may have noticed that our flag was at half-mast. We lost a very, very special person in our community last week, a guy named Jim Bates, who was the class of 1948. And Jim not only was a Salisbury graduate, but had taught here for many years, had served as a trustee, had gone to Salisbury and Yale, and had served in the U.S. military, and been a teacher his entire career, and just a wonderful, wonderful guy. And I miss him very much. He was a great friend of mine, but a great member to so many, really to generations of Salisbury students and faculty members. And I'm sure that Jim is somewhere in the clouds smiling down at this event. He loved Parents Weekend and loved the boys, and so I'm thinking about him today. This morning, there are really two parts of the morning. The first is we will celebrate the spirit of the community, and Jeff Lewis will lead us in a brief ceremony, much like we have on Tuesdays and Friday mornings here at school. And the second part of the day will be recognition of great academic work that students completed last year. And I will say this, Sam reminded me there are a number of students who are taking the the ACT this morning. So there are a few boys who will be absent who did earn some nice recognition for their academic work. But before we get to those two things, I just would love to share a few thoughts that I have that I'm thinking about in the last few weeks and months. And I promise not to be long, but I hope what I have to say has some meaning for some of you. And my topic is, why Salisbury, and what is this all-boys thing really, truly all about? So bear with me. This fall, I began my 21st year on the faculty at Salisbury School. And to be honest, it doesn't seem that long ago that I was a brand new faculty member, trying to impart wisdom on boys who were only a few years younger than I was, trying to look professional and do the right thing. And my first assignment at Salisbury was a job in the admissions office, interviewing prospective parents and students, and it was a good fit for me. I like meeting people. I like talking about schools and education, and you know, it was since I joined the Salisbury community, and it immediately felt like my school, I was able to really, I think, guide people on whether this was the right fit for their son. And it was as I said, it was a great first try. But often in those first few days and months and thousands of times in the years since, in the 2 decades since, I was asked, and I often still am asked, why Salisbury? And what is this all-boys thing really about? And in those early years as an admissions officer, I had not attended Salisbury. I had gone to a co-ed school, so it was not that easy for me early on to describe it. I had to be here. I had to live on the campus and live in the dorms and eat meals in the dining room and walk down the corridor and sit in on classes to really feel what it was all about. And I didn't have the time, the advantage of the incredible research and writing that has been conducted in the past 20 years. The research and the writing that we've seen about single-gender schools back then, 20 years ago, was really in its infancy. And so in the last 20 years, we've been given these wonderful gifts by writers like Michael Thompson and Michael Gurian, Leonard Sachs, and William Pollock, and others, and talking about, for us, about boys' schools, and there are a whole generation of authors about all girls and schools as well, and the difference in development in adolescence in boys and girls. And we know a lot more because of their research and their writing, and I am grateful. And recently, in the last year, we've been given another gift, and this one from a brilliant female author, a prominent professor of psychology at NYU named Niobe Way. And you may have seen her work. Her book is called The Secrets of Boys. It has been written about recently in the New York Times and the New Yorker magazine, among others. And I encourage you to get her book and read it if you're interested in this topic. Since you have a son, I'm sure you are. But it's called The Secrets of Boys. I just want to touch very briefly on one topic that she writes about in her work, and that is the value that boys place on their deepest, closest friendships during adolescence, the relationships that they cultivate during adolescence. And the author, Ms. Way, spent years as a secondary school counselor at a number of urban schools, and her research is based on thousands of conversations she had with teenage boys in those years. And the author's convinced, and I would completely, wholeheartedly agree, that boys place these closest, deepest relationships with their male peers during their adolescent years at the very top of their value pyramid. And especially early on in adolescence, these relationships are easy to cultivate and really so important for boys. And I see this in my own son, Zachary, who's age 13. And his best friend, Amos Gilbert, who's also age 13, they are, that relationship for Zachary trumps all else. They're brothers, my wife and I joke, they're twin sons of different mothers. In every sense of the word, they play, they compete, they fight, they talk. Gosh, one of them, Peter and Carolyn Gilbert would say the same thing when they have a sleepover. We have to tell them, at midnight, because they'll talk all night long. And I know that I joke with Tracy that either one of these boys would lay down in traffic for the other at a moment's notice with no reason given. It's this unconditional loyalty. It's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. But the author notices, and many other researchers have, that as boys get later on in adolescence, things start to change. And at that time, societal norms begin to tell them that close, personal, intimate, emotional relationships with male peers aren't the norm, aren't manly, aren't normal, aren't macho. Now, at this stage of development, society tells boys that these relationships must be with their female peers rather than their long-standing male peers. And boys suffer because of it. Some boys suffer. They suffer isolation, they suffer loneliness, they feel emotionally empty. And at this point, the author notes that the suicide rate for adolescent males quadruples. And this phenomenon has encouraged or led countless authors and researchers to delve into this topic, and I'm sure you've seen it in the New York Times or the Boston Globe, the title, Boys at Risk. It's a hot topic, and it's an alarming topic. Let me switch gears. This past summer, I spent a long weekend with a great group of friends who I went to school with years and years and years ago, playing golf and relaxing. And while our competition on the golf course is intense, although none of us are great golfers, what's really most valuable to me and my 7 friends are the laughing and the remembering and the sharing of what is going on in our adult lives. That's the most valuable piece of our time together. And at the end of the weekend, as we're hopping into cars and taxis for trips home or rides to the airport, we're all together, we hug each other. Say a quick word, I'll see you next year, or I'll see you when I see you. And I have one particular friend who often gets teary at this moment. And I love him for it. And the reason that it's poignant is that this is kind of the one moment of the year when I see this great group of friends, this group of best, closest friends. And in our adult lives, and parents, you know this, you just don't have that opportunity like you do when you're in school. And people witnessing the event have often given us looks like, what are you guys, it's a little goofy that you're all hugging each other, isn't it? Or, what are you doing? Are you in some kind of cult or something? And actually, it's just the opposite. It's real. It's incredibly meaningful. It's a moment to tell a friend how much he means to you and how much you love him for being your friend. It's an act of celebration of that friendship. So circling back to the author Naomi Way, she states that some of her inspiration for her work came from when she would watch her younger brother compete on the athletic fields with his friends, and how they were jubilant when a goal was scored, or how they would put their arms around each other's shoulders in the wake of a tough loss and console each other. And she poses the question, well, if it's so easy on the athletic fields, why don't we see that more often in just day-to-day life off the athletic fields? So these days when I'm asked, why Salisbury, and what is this all-boys thing really about? I answer with great, great conviction. Why Salisbury? Because I believe at the core of the Salisbury experience is the opportunity for these closest, deepest relationships. And the result of that opportunity is that the emotional well-being of our boys is irrevocably enriched. When I think of what I ultimately wish for each boy that attends Salisbury School, it's the same list that I have for my own 4 children. I want them to have resilient self-confidence and to believe in themselves. I want them to be polite and well-mannered, to have a work ethic and a desire to excel. I want them to have the opportunity to achieve great things, and I want them to have mentors to help them get there. But perhaps more than anything else, what I truly want for every boy that comes to Salisbury School, and for my own children, is I want them to be emotionally